Welcome to Victoria University's Graduate Online Information Series. My name's Colin Drake. I'm a Senior Lecturer in the VU Business School and I'm also your host tonight. And alongside I have Dr. Joe Pike from the School of the Visitor Economy here at Victoria University, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk to Joe about her role here at Victoria University and how the School of the Visitor Economy is interlinked with undergraduate and postgraduate business programs in tourism, hospitality and events. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Perhaps if we start, you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at VU.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm the director for the School for the Visitor Economy, which is we've been going for a couple of years now. And the idea behind the school is that we plan to grow and build and tie together all of our offerings in tourism, hospitality and events management, which start at Certificate 2 level in our TAFE sector in VU Poly, through to higher education, through to postgraduate and PhD, which is one of the offers that we have that's unique in Australia. So the school makes sure that those programs articulate, and we're working to promote them and grow those programs. We also work very closely with industry on that, and so the whole rationale for the school is that there has been quite serious skill shortages in the industry. So we're working hand in hand to meet the kind of skills and capability requirements into the future.
And I believe Victoria University's had a long history in terms of tourism hospitality.
We have, yes, and that's another string to our bow in that we were the first in Australia to offer tourism programs in the 1970s, and so now we have a really large alumni community that are working in Victoria, nationally, internationally, who all continue to stay in touch, and, or not all, but we have strong relationships, and they also contribute to and inform our programs now.
And hence the reason why we have such strong industry partnerships at Victoria University. Yeah. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, well that's one of the reasons is our very large alumni community, but also I suppose like yourself, where all the academics who work in the programs are really active in different professional associations and industry bodies. So I personally am very involved in the Victorian Tourism Industry Council. I know you're
Western Melbourne Tourism.
That's right, yeah. And the events, ICA, the industry.
That's right,
Council,
ICA, that's right. The Congress and Conference Association.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just go on.
Oh, just I guess one of the important things is the school has an industry advisory group as well, so that's a very high level group, and they have advised us and work with us on developing our programs and advising us on industry needs and so on. So
I suppose this comes at a very interesting time because the tourism industry has been literally decimated around the world because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. Perhaps if you could give us some insight, do you see tourism recovering, and if so, when? Yeah. Any ideas?
Well, you're right to say that we've been badly impacted, and I guess it would be hard not to notice that it's probably been hit harder than any other industry sector. But in terms of recovery, will the industry recover? I guess the short answer is yes. We come from a very strong base of 6% growth per annum, more than any other industry sector in the last couple of decades. So we have a really strong industry now. We also have very strong domestic tourism, which is a really important factor. So out of the $152 billion that are that's generated by the industry, 70% of that's generated by a domestic audience. So that's gives us a really strong basis for optimism as restrictions start to ease. So I think we'll see some sectors recover much quicker than others. So certainly drive holidays, caravan and camping, wellness holidays, visiting friends and relatives, all of those sectors are coming back quite quickly. We'll have to wait a bit longer though for our major events, which of course are incredibly important, particularly to Melbourne. So we're probably looking at another 12 to 18 months before we'll see recovery in those sectors.
I understand, but as you pointed out, there are some areas that this is an actual shot in the arm for the local domestic tourism market, especially since the bushfire crisis that's affected regional tourism.
Well, that's right. It's I think we're going to see a lot of people heading out into the regions, enjoying food and wine experiences, wellness experiences, strapping their bikes to the back of the car and going bicycle touring. I believe that the bicycle industry's booming at the moment. So there's a lot of silver linings in what's happening at the moment that we can expect to move along quite quickly.
And so are you optimistic in terms of, in the fullness of time, employment opportunities for tourism, hospitality and event management, getting back to an even keel or beyond?
Absolutely. I think there'll be really strong demand domestically. I mean, of course, the industry will be smaller for a while. It'll take a while before tourism operations will have the confidence to bring back their full employee quota. So I think the industry will need some additional support from government, which is what's being called for. But when international tourism starts to open up, I think we're well positioned, particularly in that we've got a good global reputation for managing this pandemic. And if people are looking for safety and wellness and security, well, Australia will be very attractive. So I think there's room for optimism down the track.
That's good to know. The other thing, of course, is that we have a very strong healthcare system as well, which is a sense of comfort if people are travelling to a developed country like Australia.
That's right.
And prior to the pandemic, we saw massive increase in tourism with the emergence of middle class in China and India and so forth coming in record numbers to Australia. Do you think that will be the driver of growth?
Well, from what I've read, there'll be some changes in those. There'll be different market segments coming. There was already a trend away from Chinese group tourism to more independent travel from China. Also perhaps a reduction from that market and an increase from other markets. So India is a really big source market for us now. I think America's always stayed strong, and I think our health and well-being will probably be a big draw card for America at the moment, and also for Europe, who've suffered particularly through this pandemic. So.
And as they approach winter, we've got a summer to offer.
That's right, absolutely.
And obviously one of the things that's been talked about is the New Zealand open border policy coming up, which is highly likely to be the first country, and I suppose TransTasman tourism will be a big growth market both ways.
Well, I think so, and something that we'll all look forward to. I think, but that's an interesting policy that's still in development. I think I suppose a priority for the Australian government at the moment is to try and ensure that maximum domestic tourism dollar stays in Australia. So I think there's a bit of working out to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And perhaps if we go a full circle and we come back to your role in the School of Visitor Economy, tell us about some of the research that the school has been involved in, because teaching is only one component, and obviously we have a very strong research background here at VU.
Yeah, I think we've maintained a very strong research profile here, and I think that's really something that's quite attractive for postgraduate students, because a lot of our teaching is research-led, and there is the opportunity to be involved through various components of the postgraduate coursework, and for future study if people choose to continue into doing PhDs. But we have a number of themes to our research: tourism economics, wellness tourism, tourism and development. I suppose a big theme that I'm particularly involved in is around sustainable or regenerative tourism, and we're very involved at the moment in projects looking at industry recovery and industry resilience, so that we can learn from these shocks and build a more resilient industry into the future, because the industry is vulnerable to shocks in Australia: bushfire, flood, cyclones, social issues. So there's some we're trying to learn as much as possible from what those impacts are and how we might move ahead into the future.
So in short, we'd have to be relatively optimistic that although we see a crisis at the moment, there will be a silver lining. We're already starting to see some green shoots of domestic travel, and as far as Victoria University is concerned, there's still strong demand for our tourism, event management and hospitality courses.
Absolutely. I think there's there has been quite critical skills shortages, and up until January this year, there was projections of skill shortages of hundreds of thousands of workers into the industry. So while it may take some time to get back to that kind of demand, I think once that borders are opened and we've got events running, there will continue to be demand for graduates. So if you start a course now, it's likely there'll be a strong demand for your skills at the end of the program.
Yeah, and let's be honest, it's not just our industry as such. There are industries everywhere that have been affected similarly. So,
Right.
you know, we'll all be sort of slowly winding back to normality. And again, it's just the time that it takes to get there. But we're optimistic because tourism is a major export earner for the Australian government, and it's front and centre in terms of policy development at the moment.
Well, it's the backbone of our export industries, and it's also it's incredibly important economically, but it's also incredibly important socially. And Australians love to travel, and it's a really important part of household budgets to spend on holidays and travel. So I've read the statistic that we spend $6,600 each on travel per year. So, and even when times are hard, people continue to prioritise that spend because it's what brings us joy, I guess. So.
And speaking to friends, they all can't wait to get away the first chance they get, because part of being in the lockdown is that you want to see somewhere other than your own home.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for the insights in the School of Visitor Economy. Perhaps at this stage, what I might do is talk a little bit about our graduate programs. VU, as you mentioned, for over 25 years has undertaken graduate programs, Masters in Tourism, Hospitality and Event Management. And these are suitable to people with an undergraduate degree or other qualification, and industry experience where possible. If you want to go back and retrain, a graduate program is one of the ways to set yourself apart from others in the workplace. Our Masters of Tourism and Destination Management and our Graduate Certificate of Tourism and Destination Management encompass a range of different units that incorporate all of those relevant areas within the industry. So things like event management, current trends, you mentioned sustainability, that's embedded in one of our units, and other key theory is taught within that particular program that incorporates both tourism and event management units, but also a range of business units. So things like marketing, finance, research and so forth are embedded within those master's programs. The benefit, I suppose, of doing that type of master's program or the grad cert program with VU is, as you pointed out, our industry connections. You know, the links that we have with organisations such as the Young Tourism Network, ICA, as we mentioned before, that offers scholarships for students each year to attend an international conference. We have relationships with the Victorian Tourism Industry Council and several other partnerships, as we've chatted about already. That means that most often that students are getting to hear from guest speakers that come from industry, come into class, talk a little bit about the applied nature of the education that we're delivering. One of the roles that I've had within the school in the last 10 years is teaching both in undergraduate and postgraduate tourism and event management programs. And I suppose the benefit I have is that, having worked in the industry for over 25 years, I have the opportunity to give back some of that knowledge to people that aspire to those roles within aviation, hospitality and event management, for example. And as mentioned earlier, we feel that there's still strong hope to consider that those roles are still going to be around when the pandemic's long gone, And people looking to move up in the industry really these days need to have a qualification to set themselves apart. It's all well and good to have industry experience, but to actually understand some of the core business skills and disciplines like marketing and finance and leadership and strategy are going to be able to set yourself apart, especially in terms of interviews with organisations if you're looking to export those skills from one role to another. And I suppose one of the things about the industry, and the reason why we lump tourism, hospitality and events together, is they are exportable skills, and people like myself have moved within those different spheres because you have transportable skills that are valid no matter which sector of that tourism industry that you happen to work in. What I might do is look to throw to some questions from the audience, and perhaps we might get some questions from our viewership, and we'll take it from there. So just bear with me while I set this up. Will completing the graduate certificate be enough to get my foot in the door? Certainly. I think that a graduate certificate program is only 4 units at postgraduate level, and sometimes people that come into postgraduate studies, either a mature age student with a lot of experience but no qualification, can be enrolled into a graduate certificate program and take those 4 units. It's a lower amount of financial outlay. You only pay per unit as you do them, so you've got plenty of time to do that. You might take 1 unit per semester and do that program over a period of time. And certainly having a qualification, if all you've got is industry experience, no matter the fact that it's a grad cert, is certainly going to set yourself apart. And who knows, if you gain confidence through those 4 units that you've done and you qualify with your grad cert, you can roll that in and get full credit for those 4 units into the master's program.
I guess, Colin, I might add to that is one of the other benefits of doing a graduate certificate is the networks that you'll make and your understanding of the possibilities in the industry. So it's quite likely that job opportunities that you weren't aware of before will become open to you and visible and you're better able to access them.
Absolutely. And I suppose that's one of the things that when you come into a university environment, you're meeting a range of different industry speakers, you're building your network, and even the network that you build with fellow students is something that you can take with you when you leave your studies. The following question that I've got is related to the main difference between completing a grad cert and a master's program. Grad cert is usually 4 units, and those 4 units are taken both from the business units of our master's program, but also from tourism or event management specific units. The difference between that and the master's program starts at 12 units, so you're basically looking at 1/3 of a master's program is in a grad cert. And in terms of the cost of the courses, it depends on how long you take to go through the course, because each year fees are slightly adjusted. Presently, the fees are available via our website, and it's probably best to dial in the course that you want and find out an exact cost. It depends again on whether you're able to claim any advanced standing for credits that you might have done in another university or for other training. That will also reduce your cost in terms of the total cost for the course. Are internships or placements available for part-time students, and what do these look like? Yes, there are internships or placements. We call it work integrated learning, and in postgrad we call it an internship over 120 hours, generally speaking. So it's usually between 120 and 150 hours, either paid or unpaid, and that counts towards a unit, usually an elective unit, within your program. Those aren't available at the grad cert, but they certainly are available at the master's and the bachelor degree in this field. The next question. Can you use a workplace in regards to industry experience? It has been known that if you are working in a particular organisation and you're seeking a work integrated learning, there can be a framework put in place between your employer and yourself to be able to give you credit. I think that's all the time we've got for questions so far, but certainly you're more than welcome to make an appointment with the course coordinator for an individual one-on-one consultation over the phone or via email, and details will be available at the end of this information session. Thanks again for Joe from the School of Visitor Economy for joining us, and thank you once again for joining us in this information panel.